God spoke many times and in many ways to our ancestors through the prophets. And now in these final days, He has spoken to us through His Son. God promised everything to the Son as an inheritance, and through the Son He created the universe. The Son radiates God's own glory and expresses the very character of God, and He sustains everything by the mighty power of His command. When He had cleansed us from our sins, He sat down in the place of honor at the right hand of the majestic God in heaven. Today we start with verse number 3. The Son radiates God's own glory and expresses the very character of God, and He sustains everything by the mighty power of His command. And when He had cleansed us from our sins, He sat down in the place of honor at the right hand of the majestic God in heaven. Believe it or not, this is a very, very heavy doctrine-filled passage. There is a lot to discuss here. So let me switch over to my notes. So what is a couple things that stand out in this passage to you guys? Verse 3. Hebrews chapter 1, verse 3. What stands out in this passage? Give me the presuppositional statements, or the propositional statements, if you will. Good? What do I hear over here? That He what? That He likes to communicate could be inferred, although that's not there. That He does communicate is true, although that's halfway there. What else? The exact expression of His nature. What else? He sustains everything. What else? That He cleansed us from our sins. What else? That He sits at the right hand of God. All right. So if you go through there, you can literally just point. There's a bunch of bullet points there. So let's start taking them apart for discussion's sake. The first one is this concept. The first one we're going to address is this concept, and I don't believe it's in the linear order. The Son radiates God's own glory and expresses the very character of God. So let's talk about that. He expresses the very character of God. If you go back to the Greek, what do you think the word is for character? Anybody? It's really simple. It is, in fact. The Greek word for character is character. And what the Greek word character means, of course not spelled CH because there is no CH in Greek. There's an X, although it's not actually an X. But the Greek word for character, if we were to spell it in English, it would be, or with phonetic language or whatever, it would be X-A-P-A-X-T-H-P. As I was reading this word, I was like, what is that word? And then I was sounding it out, and I was like, oh, that's character. Weird. Character is, the word character in Greek means an exact engraving. So this is important because when we think of character, we tend to think of the more esoteric concept of character, one's character. Does that make sense? One's personhood. This word character can imply that, but it doesn't imply it for that reason. This word character literally means something engraved. It means to be carved or burned into something, like a letter or a brand. You understand that? So Christ is the very character of God. Now, why do people, he expresses the very character of God. Now, why do people brand things? To show ownership, to what? To claim them. So when somebody claims, when somebody marks an animal, for instance, they brand it with their character that they put onto it, they are claiming that that animal belongs to them, right? Another way to put that is that that animal is them. that you treat that animal as if it is theirs, right? You treat it with the respect that that character is due. What's interesting to note about this term character is that it's an impression of direct association. So instead of it being that this character is a one-off, you guys know what a one-off is? Or a one-shot, for instance? Something that sidesteps the actual owner, for instance. What's said is that Christ actually is the character. So he's not the cow, for instance, that is branded, but he is the character. He is the brand itself. The brand is the owner. The brand is the association of the owner. The character, and this is why it has come to be viewed as someone's personal character, the reason why it's synonymous is because your brand is you. Do you understand that? So Christ is God, is what this is saying. Christ isn't God in the fact that he is the physical. He isn't God. Let me put that a different way. Christ's godhood isn't summed up in his human nature. It's summed up in what? It's summed up in his character. Now, remember, character not meaning the physical element, but meaning the identity that comes with the brand. So Christ is God's brand, and in being God's brand, he is, in fact, God. He is the essence of God. So, we're going to introduce two words to you, glossary words. One is logos, which you've heard. Another is rhama. In here, in the Greek, the word is not rhama, it's rhamati, but it's a derivative of rhama. So, who knows the difference between logos and rhama? Keep going. You kind of have them backwards, kind of. So here's the deal, and I will explain it as best I can. The word is logos. So when we say, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God, that word is logos, okay, in the Greek. They don't say word, they say logos. The word is logos until it is spoken. Once it's spoken, it becomes rhema. So when you speak, the words that you have spoken are now rhema. They are spoken words. They contain logos. Does that make sense? Once it's written down, it's cemented, it becomes logos again. So think of it in these terms. As a writer, I write down what it is that I'm trying to say. Well, that's inside me until I put it out there. Those words that are out there are the rhema. But once they're on the page and somebody's reading them, they take on a different form inside that person. Hopefully they transmit the truth that was inside me in the first place. So that rhema now becomes logos. Got it? Logos to rhema to logos. That's how this works. Christ is the character of God. In fact, the very character of God. And in being the very character of God, the exact expression, he is both the logos and the rhema. So Jesus, the personhood of Jesus as being God, is logos. Logos is what creates everything. Just like as an artist, what's inside creates what's outside, right? But the man Jesus is rhema. Do you understand that? The physical container is rhema. It's God on paper. But in meeting God on paper, we meet logos. We meet the very character of God. So both things are expressed fully. In other words, we have here the presence of both the full man who is God and the full God who is man. And that is what Hebrews is saying. That Christ is the very expression of God, both physically and spiritually. But he goes on. And he says, lost my notes. He goes on and he says that he sustains everything by the mighty power of his command. What does that mean? He sustains everything by the mighty power of his command. The word here for sustain can sometimes be translated to upheld. The word is actually the word pharaoh. P-H-E-R-O. It's where we get like pheromone, for instance. So the word is pharaoh. Not Egypt pharaoh, but pharaoh, like biology pharaoh. Pharaoh means to contain. It means to move. The example that pharaoh is used for in the Greek is as a ship that is taking something and moving it. And it keeps it safe from the waters that are outside of it. So when it says, by his command, well, it says he sustains by his command. What is he actually saying here? What is the writer of Hebrews saying about Christ's command? That it moves the world, literally, while holding it in place, keeping everything from collapsing around it. That the chaos of everything that's around it is being contained by his command. And what is the word for command? Rhama. Rhama. Meaning the physical spoken words of Christ are what keep the world from falling apart. Think about that. It is not the Logos which keeps the world from falling apart. It is by the Logos that the world comes into being. You understand this? It is by the essence of who God is that the world is created, the Logos, Christ. But it is by the physical presence of Christ and the very words that he speaks that everything is sustained, that everything is contained. And that means what about the sayings of Christ? That what? They were awesome? Yes. It means that not only does Christ speak into the life of this world by manifesting himself as the man Jesus Christ, and that the things that he wrote down spoke into existence as the Logos. But in fact, the things that he wrote that were written about what he said are paramount to the existence of reality. Why do you think it is that no matter what culture we are in, the golden rule applies? And because he spoke it. Because his words uphold reality. And that is why it does not matter who you are. It doesn't matter whether you think that he is Logos or Rhema. It doesn't matter whether you think that he's a good teacher. It doesn't matter whether you think that he's a prophet. It doesn't matter whether you think that he was crazy. His words surpass the ability to be stopped. They show themselves to be true from the beginning of history. They show themselves to be true after history will be summed up. Why? Because they are the very reason why history is capable of withstanding anything. So Hebrews. The sun radiates God's own glory and expresses the very character of God, and he sustains everything by the mighty power of his command. It is by the spoken words of Christ that this world exists. And I mean that in the absolute most physical, inclusive sense possible. He is actively commanding its existence. I was going to talk to you about quantum mechanics. We don't have a lot of time. And the problem is something called quantum Zeno effect. Basically states that the world exists because that the world that we see only is there because we observe it. And I will briefly tell you that the Bible, that this passage correlates to that wing of science in stating that the only reason this world exists the way it does is because Christ observes it. Because he, as the Logos, speaks it into existence, and because of that, it exists. I'm going to ask just a couple questions. He rules from heaven, is what it says, at the right hand of God. He puts things into existence, is what it says. He is the exact representation. Notice, exact representation. No derivation. No breaking down of that. No copier machine effect, where you copy, and then you copy, and then you copy, and you copy, and eventually it breaks down. No, he is the exact representation. He is not a step below, as Gnosticism would claim. With that said, what is it saying to me? It says to me that God holds everything in place, actively. But then, what does that call us to question? It calls us to question, what about the bad things? What does that mean for the bad things? I'll tell you my answer to that for now. My answer to that is that the writer of Hebrews lived in a very tumultuous time, more so than the time that we live in. There was, people being crucified on the streets going into the city of Rome, for instance. We live in a way better time than the writer of Hebrews lived in. They saw slavery, they saw rape, they saw all sorts of just terrible things. And yet he saw fit to make it clear that Christ is in control and sustains everything. So what that says to me is that we need to be bold enough not to say that those questions don't matter, but to say that regardless of the answer to why those things take place, we know that it doesn't change the fact that Christ is the reason for existence. So, let's break into discussion, and we'll come back for prayer after we break into discussion. Okay? Go.